In episode 10, after Old Devil Han killed 2 great Ascension cultivators from the same group as Ren Li and escaped from the cave heaven space, he unleashed the Nirvana Sacred Body and fought another battle with the clone of Bone Flame that had broken through space from the Immortal Realm. Naturally, Han Li emerged victorious, obtained the clone, and at the same time placed restrictions on Taoist Heshan, taking him in as a servant. Everyone then continued watching to follow the developments of the next episode. On Tianyu Peak, Sect Master Shi of the Heavenly Ghost Sect witnessed a single strike of the Lotus Hand destroy the 8-armed elder, whose merged spirit was instantly shattered. His mind was shaken to an extreme degree. At this moment, when he saw Taoist Heshan suddenly appear, his expression immediately became extremely ugly. "Senior Heshan, what are you doing?" He steadied himself and questioned loudly. Taoist Heshan glanced at the golden-furred giant ape in the distance, then shook his head regretfully. "Sect Master Shi, I truly dare not hide this. The 2 great elders of the Heavenly Ghost Sect have already fallen at the hands of Senior Han. The Heavenly Ghost Sect is finished." His voice was not loud, but when it fell into the ears of Sect Master Shi and the surrounding merge stage elders, it was like thunder from a clear sky, shocking them to the extreme. The 4 elders, including Elder Lu, immediately revealed sorrow and despair. Earlier, they had already felt that the aura on the giant ape seemed somewhat familiar. Now, after hearing Taoist Heshan say this, they instantly confirmed that the ferocious true spirit was indeed Han Li, and thus understood that the other party had not been speaking falsely. Elder Lu took a deep breath and secretly transmitted a message to Sect Master Shi. Sect Master Shi, who still felt some reluctance, clenched his teeth and finally bowed to Taoist Heshan in midair. "Senior Heshan, if the fate of the Heavenly Ghost Sect has truly run out, we are unwilling to throw away our lives together with it. This junior is willing to surrender. From now on, I will certainly serve Senior Han like an ox or a horse. We will be content just to preserve our cultivation foundations. As for the Heavenly Ghost Sect, you may accept the wrath of Senior Han yourselves." Taoist Heshan showed a trace of surprise, then spoke lightly. As soon as his words fell, he flicked his sleeve, and an ancient wooden sword appeared in midair. The wooden sword crazily expanded, transforming into a swordlight over 10 meters long. Countless mysterious talismans swirled around the blade, emitting a dazzling golden glow. In an instant, the sword transformed into a streak of rainbow light that slashed towards Sect Master Shi and the others. The void trembled violently and was split open by a massive pitch-black rift. Sect Master Shi and the remaining 5 were instantly terrified. Their figures shot backward in different directions at the same time. Brilliant lights flared from their bodies as they hastily activated various defensive methods. While these people were fighting each other, the golden giant ape had already appeared at the previous mountain peak. The giant ape roared madly, raised both fists, and struck the mountain wall violently. With a thunderous boom, the mountain wall cracked instantly, countless fractures spreading densely like a spiderweb. Immediately afterward, the entire mountain collapsed with a tremendous crash. Massive clouds of dust rose up like rolling yellow dragons. At this moment, a tall figure suddenly emerged from the dust. It was none other than Han Li, who had already recovered his human form. His gaze swept across the surroundings, and he saw escape lights flickering everywhere. Almost all the elders and disciples of the Heavenly Ghost Sect were fleeing in all directions. On the side of Tianyu Peak, lights were also flashing, and loud explosions continued without pause. Taoist Heshan appeared to be fiercely battling Sect Master Shi and several merged stage elders of the Heavenly Ghost Sect. Han Li slowly closed his eyes and murmured an incantation. Then he opened his mouth and spat out a silver fireball. The fireball flew into midair and transformed into a silver fire dragon more than a meter long. Han Li waved his hand and formed a hand seal, lightly pointing a finger at the silver fire dragon. The silver fire dragon suddenly raised its head, let out a clear cry, and its body expanded at an unbelievable speed. In the blink of an eye, it grew to nearly the size of a mountain. It flapped its wings and flew toward a densely packed cluster of buildings. A world-shaking explosion rang out as the silver fire dragon plunged straight into the center of the buildings, instantly transforming into a sea of flames that devoured everything around it. Seeing this, Han Li turned and flew toward another mountain several hundred kilometers away. Taoist Heshan had already informed him that this mountain was called Zhangyu Peak, one of the most important peaks of the Heavenly Ghost Sect. The Scripture Pavilion and the Alchemy and Artifact Halls were both located there. Several days later, behind the purple bamboo forest on the peak of Sacred Fire Peak of the Cold Flame Sect, Sima Jingming was holding a communication array plate in his hand, his face filled with joy. He paced slowly back and forth in the room. This cultivator's cultivation career had already spanned countless years, and his composure should have been well refined, yet at this moment he truly could not restrain himself. Just then, the painting on the wall suddenly lit up, and the figure of the Cold Flame Ancestor slowly appeared. "Greetings, Ancestor." Sima Jingming immediately stopped, bowed deeply, and saluted. So, has there been a result? The Cold Flame Ancestor asked indifferently. Reporting to Ancestor, there is extremely good news, Sima Jingming said, his eyes shining. The Cold Flame Ancestor slightly furrowed his brows but did not speak. Sima Jingming immediately realized that he had lost his composure due to excessive joy and hurriedly apologized. Then he straightened his expression and reported solemnly, "Ancestor, please forgive me. Today, Senior Han suddenly sent word that the Heavenly Ghost Sect has been erased from the Spirit Ring realm. He wants us to take over part of the Heavenly Ghost Sect's territory and forces as compensation for the techniques and manuals that were destroyed earlier." "And what about the Nine Origins Sect?" the Cold Flame Ancestor asked calmly. Although Senior Han did not mention it, according to the information received, the Nine Origins Sect suffered heavy losses, but it was not completely annihilated like the Heavenly Ghost Sect. After hearing this, the Cold Flame Ancestor slightly knitted his brows and fell silent for a long time before murmuring, "I originally thought that when Han Li was on the brink of death, he would cause both sects to suffer severe damage. I did not expect that relying solely on his own strength, he could cause the Nine Origins Sect to suffer heavy losses and even lightly wipe out the Heavenly Ghost Sect. I truly underestimated him back then. Ancestor, after this matter, our Cold Flame Sect will certainly become the #1 sect in the Spirit Ring realm," Sima Jingming could not help but say. "Do not become complacent and reckless. Pay close attention to the movements of the Nine Origins Sect. Also, it seems that Han Li still has a younger sister within our sect. From now on, she must be treated with great respect. In addition, anyone connected to him should also be given preferential treatment. We must do our utmost to cultivate good relations," the Cold Flame Ancestor reminded. In a cave dwelling on the mountainside of Cloud Exiting Peak, late at night, cold moonlight streamed through the window and illuminated the room. It fell upon a young woman in palace attire with snow-white skin and breathtaking beauty. She was sitting on a chair, her face filled with joy and happiness, even as two clear streams of tears flowed down her cheeks. "Father, elder brother, the Heavenly Ghost Sect has been destroyed by Big Brother Han. Fing Nation will once again be governed by the Cold Flame Sect. The great revenge of our Yu family has finally been avenged. In a few days, the people of our clan will be able to return to our homeland. Father and elder brother, if your spirits still watch over us from above, you can finally rest in peace." The young woman wiped away her tears and spoke softly to herself. This young woman was Yu Ming'an. At this moment, because her great revenge had been fulfilled, she cried tears of joy. However, she could not stop the image of a tall young man from appearing in her mind, making her emotions grow complicated. "Big Brother Han," she murmured silently in her heart. Nearly half a month later, on Nine Palace Peak of the Nine Origin Sect, Han Li, dressed in green robes, pressed the final spirit stone into the ground. A faint clicking sound rang out, and the entire spirit gathering platform suddenly lit up. A hazy curtain of silver light descended from the sky like mist, completely enveloping the platform. At this moment, all the points on the star map lit up. Han Li raised his head to look at the stars shining across the night sky. He stepped along the stone stairs, calmly and slowly walking up onto the spirit gathering platform. In the Immortal realm, at an unknown location beside a boundless sea, an enormous mountain rose up from the ocean surface. It stood over 1,000 jang tall, shaped like the sharp beak of an eagle. At the summit of the mountain stood a majestic city of immense size. The city walls were more than 100 jang tall and were constructed from refined stone, making the entire city pitch black and blending seamlessly with the mountain itself. Near where the city met the vast sea, the surface of the walls bore signs of erosion. These were marks left over countless years by massive waves, thousands of jang high, crashing against the city during violent storms. Inside the city, 4 broad, straight main roads extended outward, branching into many narrower side streets. Buildings and shops of various sizes lined these streets. The city's population was considerable. On the main roads, carriages and horses flowed endlessly like water, while the side streets were crowded everywhere, creating a scene of great bustle and noise. In the southwestern part of the city stood a towering bluestone slab that occupied nearly an entire street. Shops with tiled roofs filled its interior, selling all kinds of goods imaginable. Colorful flags fluttered everywhere along both sides of the street, and pedestrians moved incessantly, making the area quite noisy. Beside an ancient green poplar tree and the bluestone slab at the end of the street stood a small 3-story pavilion building. It was plainly constructed and not eye-catching at all. The walls were made of blue bricks, the pillars of red wood, and the roof had blue octagonal tiles. Hanging at the front, close to the street, was a blue banner bearing the character for medicine, making it look utterly ordinary. Inside the corridors of the building, several attendants moved busily about, serving merchants who were purchasing spiritual medicines. A few customers were guided by the shopkeeper along a staircase up to the second floor. At the end of the second floor corridor was a blue wooden door separating it from the upper floor. At this moment, in a guest room on the third floor, A soft cushioned couch was arranged inside. A purple tea table sat upon it, while sandalwood incense smoke curled through the room, filling the air with fragrance. On either side of the tea table sat two people facing each other, each holding a cup of fragrant tea. One was a young man dressed in black, handsome in appearance with sharp features. This was none other than Fang Pan. The other appeared to be in his 40s or 50s, slightly plump, wearing silk robes embroidered with floral patterns. His hands were tucked into his sleeves, and his face carried a warm, cheerful expression, looking exactly like a wealthy merchant. After glancing around the room and seeing flickering light from a golden barrier that enveloped the space, Fang Pan spoke. For your esteemed establishment to conceal its base and mix among ordinary people in such a bustling city, that is quite interesting. The middle-aged man laughed and replied, What is our 10 Directions Pavilion compared to the Great Sex? Given the nature of our profession, we naturally need eyes and ears everywhere, so we cannot set up in secluded Immortal Mountains. Earlier, your people sent word that there was news of that person. Is it true? Fang Pan carefully shifted the topic and asked in return. Of course. We invited you here precisely to complete this transaction, the middle-aged man said with a smile. Hearing this, Fang Pan said nothing further. He flipped his wrist and took out a blue storage pouch, placing it on the table. The middle-aged man picked up the pouch and swept it lightly with his spiritual sense. The joy on his face grew more obvious, and he nodded. The person you are looking for is currently in the Spirit Ring realm. As he spoke, he waved his other hand, and a large round golden-purple bowl filled with water appeared on the tea table. The middle-aged man raised one finger and lightly tapped the rim of the bowl. The water inside immediately rippled, and a screen of blue light appeared, revealing an image of an intense, starry battle. On one side was a giant ape, and on the other was a yellow armored giant. When Fang Pan saw the image of the mountain-sized golden giant ape, his expression immediately turned solemn, and icy killing intent surged forth without concealment. The merchant-like middle-aged man saw this but showed no change in expression, still wearing a gentle smile. After a moment, he lightly traced a circle over the golden-purple bowl with his finger. The light inside the bowl abruptly extinguished, and the image vanished at once. This person is still within a sect called the Nine Origin Sect in the Spirit Ring realm. He will not be leaving anytime soon, the middle-aged man said slowly. Thank you for troubling your pavilion, Fang Pan said in thanks, though he had already begun calculating how to travel to the Spirit Ring realm. No need for thanks. Taking money to provide information is only natural. If you have need in the future, just remember to return to our pavilion, the middle-aged man said cheerfully, clasping his hands. Fang Pan was about to speak further when the golden light at his waist suddenly flickered, paused briefly, and then flashed repeatedly. Seeing this, the middle-aged man immediately stood up and said respectfully, This place is sealed by restrictions, so there will absolutely be no problems. You are an honored guest. Since you need some time, I will not disturb you. After speaking, he gave a slight bow and left the room without looking back. Once the other man had gone far away, Fang Pan waved his hand. A golden command token decorated with exquisite patterns appeared in his palm. He looked at the flashing light on the token, hesitated slightly, then closed his eyes and sent his spiritual sense into it. At once, his figure appeared within a magnificent golden hall. The hall was almost entirely empty, with only the stone walls on all sides carved with many exquisitely detailed murals. At the front of the hall stood a woman in palace attire, her face covered by a thin white veil. When she saw the black-clad youth, she spoke. Fang Pan, recently within the Cloud Prefecture realm, the great hidden beast tide that occurs once every 1,000 years has erupted, several hundred cities have been slaughtered, and more than 10 sects have suffered catastrophic annihilation. You are hereby ordered to enter the Cloud Prefecture realm to handle this matter. Upon hearing this, the black-clad youth's expression stiffened slightly. He hesitated for a moment before speaking. Immortal Envoy, to completely suppress the hidden beast tide, would take at least several years. This subordinate also has an urgent matter that must be handled immediately. May I ask if someone else can be assigned to carry out this mission? All of your subordinates already have assignments. No one is idle. Only you, since completing your last task, have yet to accept a new one. The white-clothed fairy shook her head and said, But, Immortal Envoy, Fang Pan began. Enough, the white-clothed fairy interrupted. Fang Pan, do not forget your responsibilities and the regulations of the Immortal Palace. I dare not disobey. Fang Pan accepts the order, he replied. Though extremely unwilling, he could only answer helplessly. He then withdrew his spiritual sense from the command token. His expression turned gloomy as he ground his teeth inwardly and muttered, Consider it your good fortune, brat. I'll let you live a few more years. 3 years later, at night atop Nine Palace Peak of the Nine Origin Sect, silvery light shone brilliantly, making it seem almost like daytime. The entire spirit-gathering platform was enveloped by 7 enormous pillars of silvery white light. A vast stellar force converged into a gigantic vortex that encircled the pillars, forming what looked like an insurmountable outer wall. At this moment, on the high platform, Han Li sat cross-legged at the center, as though filled to the brim with starlight. His entire body glowed, nearly transparent. On his chest and abdomen were 6 blue points of light arranged in the shape of a ladle, radiating dazzling brilliance. At the end, the 7th blue point, though still somewhat hazy, had become much clearer. Han Li's eyelashes trembled, and his eyes suddenly opened. As he withdrew the hand seals, the radiance of the 7 pillars of light enveloping the spirit-gathering platform dispersed and gradually vanished into the air. 7 streams of black light spiraled as they flew, transforming into 7 Star Moon treasure mirrors that landed in Han Li's hands, and he took them back. Previously, at the 9 Origin Sect, when he was trying to escape from a secret realm, he had detonated the mirrors. Later, when he arrived at the Heavenly Ghost Sect, he obtained a large quantity of Yin Spirit Stones, so he refined the 7 mirrors again. He smiled and murmured, "At last, I'm about to condense the 7th Mystic Aperture." As for Mystic Immortals, he previously did not have many feelings about it. However, starting 3 years ago, after fighting the Yellow Armored Giant and then cultivating to this level of the Little Northern Dipper Stellar Origin art, he had gained a more concrete understanding of Mystic Immortals. He believed that once he pushed his body to its ultimate limit and met an opponent like the Yellow Armored Giant again, he might not need to use the Brahma Sacred True Demon art anymore. With physical strength alone, it would be enough to suppress the opponent. Thinking of this, he suddenly remembered something. With a flip of his hand, a large bean appeared in his palm, about the size of a peach pit. It was the bean taken from the chest of the Yellow Armored Giant. Ever since learning that a secret organization in the Immortal Realm had posted a bounty on him, Han Li had been too busy cultivating to increase his strength, so this was the first time he carefully examined the bean. He raised his hand and focused on it for a moment, then discovered that apart from being several times larger than an ordinary golden bean, it had nothing special. But when he probed into the golden bean with his spiritual sense, he was immediately shocked. Inside the bean was filled with a dense green radiance. If he had not seen it with his own eyes and only sensed it with closed eyes, Han Li would even have thought he was standing before a vast forest. It was brimming with vitality, and such powerful life force was astonishing. This thing was truly not ordinary. Han Li opened his eyes and could not help sighing. From this golden bean, he could only tell it was used to condense the Yellow Armored Giant, and he still did not understand how to undo it. He wanted to take this object containing life force to study it, since it was hard to say whether it might be useful in the future. After pondering for a moment, he flicked his wrist and put the bean away, then immediately stood up and walked down along the stone steps beside the spirit-gathering platform. At this moment, from the horizon in the night, a thick beam of light suddenly flew over and landed in front of him. A figure emerged from the escape light. It was Taoist Heshan. His face was full of anxiety. He hurriedly bowed to Han Li and said, "Senior Han, something has happened." Han Li slightly frowned and asked, "What happened?" Taoist Sima just sent word from the Cold Flame Sect. He said Miss Lu was captured. Taoist Heshan stammered. "Speak. What exactly happened?" Han Li said with a dark expression. Seeing Han Li's expression turn unfriendly, Taoist Heshan hurriedly explained, "At dusk tonight, a woman in white broke through the restrictions and charged into the Cold Flame mountain range. She attacked Cloud Exiting Peak and captured Miss Lu. That person openly captured Yuer like this, and the Cold Flame Sect didn't have anyone make a move to stop her?" Han Li thought for a moment and asked again. Taoist Sima said he intended to stop her, but as soon as he acted, the woman easily repelled him. Moreover, the other party only casually waved a hand and knocked him away, so he could not stop her. But it seems the woman had no intention of injuring them. She only said that she was from the same clan as Miss Lu, and then took her away. Taoist Heshan replied with a bow. With a wave of her sleeve, she could repel Sima Jingming? Han Li was slightly startled, his face turning contemplative. Taoist Sima described it like this. "Senior Han, do you need me to dispatch disciples of the 9 Origin Sect to inquire about Miss Lu's whereabouts? When it comes to finding people, my 9 Origin Sect is extremely Taoist Heshan," proposed hesitantly. Han Li looked at him and cut him off as soon as he opened his mouth. "In this realm, is there someone who can repel a Great Ascension cultivator with a single wave of the hand?" Taoist Heshan froze briefly. "This probably does not exist." "All right, I know. Withdraw," Han Li said. Taoist Heshan respectfully answered, "Yes," and left the spirit-gathering platform. Han Li watched Taoist Heshan depart and fell silent for a moment. Then he waved his hand, and a screen of silver light appeared, covering the entire spirit-gathering platform. Early the next morning, Taoist Heshan's stout figure appeared before 9 Palace Peak. He respectfully saluted toward the spirit-gathering platform and called out loudly, "This junior, Heshan, pays respects to Senior Han." In fact, over the past 3 years, he had come here every day to deliver messages and report to Han Li about the situation in the Spirit Ring realm, whether it was the sect's direction or major decisions by the Cold Flame sect. No matter the wind or rain, it never stopped. Although Han Li used most of his time to cultivate in seclusion, at that time Taoist Heshan only needed to respectfully report once and then wait about an hour, after which he would respectfully take his leave and depart. Throughout the process, he was sincerely respectful and never showed impatience. After some time, the disciples of the Nine Origins sect gradually discovered that this Supreme Grand Elder at the Great Ascension stage, who normally stayed hidden and was rarely seen, had appeared outside. Although they only saw him from afar, for the low-level disciples, this already made them extremely excited. Of course, almost all Merge Stage and Refinement Stage Elders knew more or less about what was going on, but they all kept their mouths shut, acting as if they had never known anything. That day, Taoist Heshan stood respectfully in midair with clasped hands, more than 100 zhang away from Nine Palace Peak. As he looked at the spirit-gathering platform shrouded in silver light, he felt puzzled. In the past, the area around Han Li's cultivation was always filled with stellar power, and more or less there should have been some movement. Why was it so peaceful today? But even if he had doubts, he did not dare disturb him casually, since perhaps Han Li was cultivating some other technique inside. So he obediently waited, and only after a long time did he take his leave and depart. Time passed day after day. Every day he came here, and every day he saw no movement from inside the spirit-gathering platform at all. In the blink of an eye, 2 months had passed, and Taoist Heshan gradually lost patience. Today, after waiting a full half-day, he still did not detect any changes outside the spirit-gathering platform. Everything was only an unbroken silver screen stretching across the sky. Senior Han, regarding Lu Yuer, I have found a small clue. I wonder if you have time, Taoist Heshan took a deep breath and asked. But the silver screen still did not respond at all. Senior Han! Taoist Heshan shouted twice, yet the person inside the silver light still did not reply. His expression changed as though he had thought of something. He hurriedly waved his hand and shot a golden light into the silver screen. The screen immediately shattered. Inside was empty. Han Li's figure was nowhere to be seen. On the table lay a white jade slip. Taoist Heshan picked it up. As soon as his spiritual sense entered it, his fleshy face trembled repeatedly, showing an excited expression, because inside the jade slip was the method to remove the restrictions in his body. Many thanks, Senior Han. He withdrew his spiritual sense, looked toward the distant horizon, and bowed deeply, whether or not the other party could sense it. In the Cold Flame Mountain Range, inside a grand hall, after Sima Jingming finished discussing matters with the Sect Master and several Merge Stage Elders, everyone took their leave and departed. At this moment, only Sima Jingming remained in the hall. He let out a soft breath, his expression showing some fatigue. Several years had passed. Ever since the once #1 sect in the Spirit Ring realm, the Heavenly Ghost sect, was suddenly annihilated overnight. Forces everywhere had been fighting endlessly to seize their territory. As one of the 3 great sects and the only force that had not suffered losses, the Cold Flame sect was extremely busy. Even though Sima Jingming was a great ascension cultivator, he had no time to cultivate quietly and spent all day here handling various affairs. For a very long time in the past, he had basically only focused on secluded cultivation and rarely paid attention to sect affairs. But now, he suddenly had to manage matters within the sect, and he truly was not used to it. Of course, he accepted doing so because he had assumed the Nine Origin sect had suffered severe damage to its foundation. Unexpectedly, the other side not only had not lost strength, but it also obtained quite a few benefits from the former forces of the Heavenly Ghost sect. Why had it turned out like this? He knew very clearly, but there was no way he could say it out loud. Still, thanks to the Cold Flame sect's expanding influence, the Cold Flame ancestor in the Immortal realm was extremely pleased and had granted rewards several times in a row. With those rewards, later on he would only need to focus on secluded cultivation, and his strength could advance another step. When the time came, achieving completion and ascending to the Immortal realm would no longer be out of reach. Sima Jingming was secretly delighted. He stood up and was about to head behind the main hall when a familiar voice suddenly sounded. Taoist Sima. Sima Jingming immediately changed expression. A blue light flashed, and a man in green robes appeared in the hall. It was Han Li. He kept his hands tucked into his sleeves, and a trembling silver light formed as a purple talisman-like afterimage appeared. When Sima Jingming saw the visitor clearly, his pupils shrank. Countless thoughts flashed through his mind in an instant. He forced a bright smile and clasped his hands. So it is Senior Han. We haven't met in years. Senior's bearing has only grown higher and higher. The matter before was truly something to celebrate. You are too polite, Taoist Sima, Han Li said, his tone somewhat indifferent. Senior Han, please take a seat, Sima Jingming said, his thoughts churning as he hurriedly invited Han Li to sit in the seat of honor. He himself sat to the side in attendance. Han has come today with nothing else. I only heard that my younger sister, Lu, was taken away from the Cold Flame sect. Is that true? Han Li asked as soon as he sat down. Yes. It was because this junior did not take proper care, allowing someone to take Miss Lu away. However, there are other circumstances, Sima Jingming said, uneasy. When that person took Yu'er, did you see anything unusual? What did that woman say? Han Li cut him off, his face expressionless. Reporting to Senior, that person was a young woman in white. She was beautiful, and she claimed to be from the same clan as Lu Yu'er. She asked me to pass a message to Senior Han saying she thanks you for looking after Yu'er. As for this woman's background, this junior is certain I have never met her before. Afterward, I even dispatched disciples in the sect to investigate many places, but there was no progress. So this junior has a small conjecture, Sima Jingming said, hesitating slightly at the end. Tell me, Han Li said, raising an eyebrow slightly. This junior conjectures that she is not someone from within the Spirit Ring realm. Her strength is extremely powerful, to the point that this junior could not even take a single move from her. This junior even suspects that this woman is a true immortal from the upper realm, Sima Jingming said. Han Li had already anticipated it in his heart, so when he heard Sima Jingming say this, he was not surprised. He only frowned and pondered. From what he knew, Lu Yu'er came from the Cloud Fox clan, merely a branch of fox spirits that had declined. Otherwise, back then, they would not have been wiped out by the Bloodblade Society. How could a true immortal suddenly appear? Could it be that among that clan's ancestors, someone had ascended to the immortal realm and now happened to return to the Spirit Ring realm? Or was it that Lu Yu'er had still concealed some matters from him? If Dawasima has already done his best, then Han naturally cannot blame you. If that person truly is Yu'er's clanswoman, perhaps she will not do her any harm. Han Li thought for a moment, then sighed. When Sima Jingming saw that Han Li was not angry, he finally breathed a light sigh of relief. Only then did he realize that his back was already drenched in cold sweat. Also, Han has come here with one more matter. I wish to ask Taoist Sima, Han Li said after a brief silence. I dare not. If Senior Han has something to ask, please speak. This junior will tell everything I know, Sima Jingming said hurriedly. I wonder whether your sect's Cold Flame Taoist has ever spoken with you about the matter of ascending to the Immortal Realm. From the Spirit Ring Realm? Are there any taboos when ascending to the Immortal Realm? Han Li asked bluntly. Sima Jingming was startled and stammered. He took a deep breath before replying respectfully. Senior Han, when one reaches the highest level of body refinement and becomes a true ultimate body, the body will be rejected by the power of this realm. If one wishes to ascend, one must possess the power to break through space. So that's how it is, Han Li said, somewhat startled, and nodded lightly. No wonder that as he cultivated the Little Northern Dipper Stellar origin art closer to completion, he increasingly sensed an invisible, unclear, suppressive force, and even his techniques and escapes were affected somewhat. The Spirit Ring realm is close to the Northern Cold Immortal Domain. Therefore, ascending from here to the Immortal Realm will most likely pass through an ascension platform and be guided to the Northern Cold Immortal Domain. There are no taboos. On the contrary, because the spiritual energy in the lower realm is thin, anyone who can ascend successfully has extremely high talent and a steadfast temperament, and is therefore highly valued in the Immortal Realm, Sima Jingming said without concealing anything. Speaking all that he knew, Han Li's expression did not change, but inside his mind, thoughts churned. The Immortal Realm's attitude toward ascended immortals, whether from the Spirit Realm in the past or from the Spirit Ring Realm now, was the same. The difference was that he was currently being watched by some force or person in the Immortal Realm, so he did not want to draw that party's attention. Right. Aside from relying on the guidance of the Ascension platform, actually the Spirit Ring Realm still has a method of ascending by illegal means. When ascending, you will not pass through the Ascension platform. Sima Jingming suddenly thought of something and hurriedly added. Can you explain a bit? Han Li asked, looking as if it were casual. This method, put plainly, is to seek out a weak spatial junction between the Immortal Realm and the Spirit Ring Realm, forcibly break space, and rely on the gap between the two realms to enter the Immortal Realm. Sima Jingming thought for a moment and then said, I'm afraid doing that would involve quite a few difficulties, Han Li said, while secretly smiling bitterly. He had once used this method to enter the Spirit Realm by illegal means. However, the Spirit Ring Realm and the Immortal Realm should be very close to each other, so this method could be used here. Senior is wise. This method is extremely dangerous. The space between the two realms is extremely perilous. Even if one is lucky enough to pass through, upon entering the Immortal Realm, it is very likely that one will be teleported to dangerous locations. There is no good place at the spatial junction between the two realms. Moreover, ascending by this method will not undergo the Immortal Pool's body tempering, and you will not receive an Immortal token certifying your identity or the accompanying benefits. Later, you will also encounter many difficulties in the Immortal Realm. Sima Jingming answered honestly. Han Li nodded slowly, his expression unchanged, yet he felt somewhat excited inside. The matter of ascending to the Immortal Realm had long been a thorn in his heart. Today, He had finally found a way to resolve it. As for the dangers Sima Jingming mentioned, with his current strength, as long as he prepared well, there was no need to worry. Many thanks, Taoist Sima. Han Li nodded and thanked him. Senior Han, you must not be polite with this junior. Senior has brought our sect immense benefits. The ancestor instructed me to express thanks to Senior, Sima Jingming said sincerely. I didn't expect Taoist Cold Flame would still remember Han. Han Li gave a faint smile and said something with deep meaning. Senior Han jokes. The ancestor, Sima Jingming, was startled and hurriedly tried to explain. All right. Taoist Sima need not say more, Han Li said. He suddenly turned and transformed into a streak of green rainbow light as he left. Watching the streak of green rainbow light vanish at the edge of the horizon, Sima Jingming could not help letting out a long breath. After leaving the Cold Flame sect, Han Li seemed to completely disappear and was not seen again in the Spirit Ring realm. However, for some reason, some stories about him were embellished into many versions, turning him into a legendary figure in the Spirit Ring realm. Because within just a few years of entering this place, he had caused the Spirit Ring realm, once maintaining a balanced state, to be rocked by waves of bloodshed and turmoil. Some people said he was someone who stayed in seclusion year-round and never showed himself. Some said he was an exiled immortal. Others said he was the descendant of some ancient true spirit monster. Praise and criticism about him across the Spirit Ring realm were not the same. Some called him a great devil who killed without blinking. Others said he was a good person who destroyed the overbearing Heavenly Ghost sect and brought peace to the Spirit Ring realm. In short, there were many different stories about him. However, the destruction of a colossal power like the Heavenly Ghost sect led to chaotic conflicts that lasted for several hundred years. Only after all forces, great and small, went through countless bloody life and death battles, and innumerable cultivators fell, did things gradually stabilize. Of course, those matters were for later. A few months after Liu Yuer was kidnapped, on a clear day with sunlight shining down, there was an endless sea covered in black mist in the far north of the Spirit Ring realm, called the Black Sea. The spiritual energy in the sea region was somewhat dense. Many sea creatures lived here, and many kinds of spiritual materials appeared as well. So quite a few cultivators came here to search for spiritual materials and hunt demon beasts. Deep within the Black Sea, beside a deserted island, rumbling sounds echoed without end. Towering waves surged on the sea surface, reaching dozens of jang high and spreading in all directions. The dense black mist above the sea was also drawn by that power, spinning into an enormous vortex. Within the vortex, a green-robed woman, an old man in black, and a middle-aged Taoist were fiercely battling a sea beast. These three all had early-stage transformation stage cultivation. Although they cultivated different techniques, they coordinated extremely well, clearly not the first time they had joined forces. The treasure lights of the three connected together, forming a huge circle that surrounded the sea beast in the middle, and then launched layered attacks. The sea beast was a deep green sea bull. On its back were two black lines extending from its forehead all the way to its tail. It looked extremely strange. From time to time, its mouth emitted bizarre sounds. Blue light flickered over its body, and dense blue thunderballs appeared, stubbornly withstanding wave after wave of attacks. In addition, its mouth spat out thick blue beams of light at the three of them. After the fierce battle lasted for half an hour, the protective radiance of the sea bull was finally broken. Its head was pierced through by a spiraling sword light from the old man in black, creating a large bloody hole. The sea bull let out a loud cry, struggled a few times, and then lay still, motionless. Haha, Taoist Qin's heaven-piercing sword is truly formidable. Even the layered defenses of this mature sea bull couldn't stop it. The middle-aged Taoist laughed as he praised. You flatter me, the old man in black replied, showing a pleased expression. He lightly waved a hand and retrieved the black sword. It was an unusual sword, looking like two poisonous snakes entwined together, emitting a cold, gloomy black glow. He put the sword away with extreme care. He had spent more than half of a lifetime's savings to obtain it. Its power was comparable to an ordinary spirit treasure, and it also had an armor-piercing ability, specifically to deal with some sea beasts with thick flesh. The three quickly dismembered the sea bull's corpse, evenly dividing the spoils. Their gains were not small. In my view, the three of us joining forces to face a late-stage transformation sea beast, even if we can't guarantee victory, we can still retreat safely. Why not go a bit deeper? The green-robed woman suggested. Looking toward the depths of the Black Sea, the middle-aged Taoist's eyes flickered, as if he also wanted to go deeper. Absolutely not. You two haven't been in the Black Sea long, so you still don't know how dangerous that place is. That is the Fierce Land, the Sea Eye Belt. There are countless deep-sea eyes there, and within them live only powerful sea beasts. Most of the sea beasts there have refinement stage cultivation, and some are even at the merge stage. I've also heard rumors that deep in the sea eyes there is a sea beast that can compare to the Great Ascension stage, Aside from a few merged stage grade experts, no one dares approach that place. To be honest, us chasing this sea bull into here is already very dangerous. We cannot go on. We must turn back immediately, the old man in black said urgently, his expression grave. A great ascension sea beast? That's unbelievable. The middle-aged Taoist sucked in a cold breath. The green-robed woman also showed a disbelieving expression. That's only a legend. I heard that five-clawed black flood dragon has lived for over 100,000 years. The last time it appeared was several thousand years ago, and at that time it had reached merge stage cultivation. After so many years of seclusion, if it hasn't exhausted its lifespan, perhaps it has advanced to great ascension. No matter what, this place is fraught with danger. We should leave as quickly as possible, the old man in black said, shaking his head with worry. The middle-aged Taoist and the green-robed woman hurriedly nodded. The three were just about to fly away when, at this instant, a heaven-shaking explosion sounded from the sea region ahead. From the sound, it was extremely far away, yet it still reached straight to the three of them. Moreover, the nearby sea region shook violently once. The three changed color. Before they could react, the explosion sounded again, and at the same time, a huge, chaotic, spiritual pressure surged over, whipping up violent whirlwinds. The three panicked and immediately turned to flee, but it was too late. Before they could run, they were caught by the whirlwind and flung away. Fortunately, the whirlwind weakened not far away. The three hurriedly circulated their techniques to steady themselves, their faces pale with fright. But at this moment, another thunderous boom rang out. The sea surface ahead, several hundred li away, suddenly exploded. A gigantic black shadow shot up from beneath the water and crashed heavily onto a deserted island not far from them. The entire island shook violently, sending out rings of shockwaves and making the sea surge in rolling waves. That black shadow was clearly an enormous black flood dragon, 200 to 300 jang long. Its entire body was covered in black scales. On its head grew two shining coral-like horns. On its chest and abdomen grew 4 dragon claws, each claw like 5 sharp swords, flashing with radiance that made people shudder. The massive aura emanating from this 5-clawed black flood dragon made the three even more terrified. Especially the old man in black. He was not a rogue cultivator, but an inner disciple of a not small sect that even had a merge stage ancestor in residence. Yet the aura of this 5-clawed black flood dragon was even greater than that merge stage ancestor's. Could that legend be true? The old man's heart trembled as he could not help but speculate. The 5-clawed flood dragon struggled and shook its body again, making the ground quake once more. The old man in black was shocked and hurriedly retreated more than 100 jang, staring closely. Only then did he see that the flood dragon's abdomen had been torn open with a huge hole, and blood was gushing out, dyeing a stretch of the deserted island red. With a whoosh, a blue figure shot out from the sea. The speed was so fast that only a streak of blue light could be seen as it swept to the side of the 5-clawed flood dragon. A cold flash of light appeared, and the flood dragon's body stopped moving. Then a thick pillar of blood shot straight into the sky, as if a rain of blood had appeared over the island. A foul stench spread all around. With a loud crash, the flood dragon's body fell, trembling a few times before finally going still. But at this moment, a streak of black light wrapped around a small black flood dragon and flashed as it rushed out from inside the flood dragon's body, fleeing in panic. The blue figure seemed to have anticipated this. With a blur, he blocked the little black flood dragon's path, opened his mouth, and spat out a mass of blue radiance that enveloped it, dragged it back, and casually sealed it into a jade bottle. The three, including the old man in black, stared dumbfounded at the scene. The green-robed woman even swallowed instinctively. A flicker of green light appeared, revealing a tall man in a blue robe. He looked only about 25 or 26, with ordinary features and dark skin. The man in blue did not pay any attention to the three of them. He calmly walked to the side of the enormous 5-clawed flood dragon. He raised his hand and spread his 5 fingers, grabbing at the empty air. With a popping sound, the dragon's head exploded, and a black core the size of a fist flew out. Dark patterns swirled across its surface. This was the demon core of the 5-clawed black flood dragon. The young man's expression did not change as he examined it briefly before putting it away. Then his 5 fingers came together into a blade-like hand. Several crisp cracking sounds rang out, and the 4 claws of the flood dragon were severed and fell off. After collecting the claws, he looked to another part of the flood dragon. There was a round silver scale plate nearly a zhang wide, surrounded by black scales that were distinctly different, as well as several slightly silvery bone spines, all emitting astonishing waves of spiritual energy. Faint patterns could be seen on the silver scale plate and the bone spines, similar to those on the demon core. The young man carefully took the silver scale and the bone spines, then took several other items from the flood dragon. Only then did he stand up and turn to look at the three nearby. Even though his gaze carried no malice, the three still could not help feeling tense, Cold sweat poured down like rain, and their hands and feet became clumsy. The man in blue did not bother with them. He withdrew his gaze and transformed into a streak of green rainbow light as he flew away. Only after he completely vanished into the distance did the three finally let out a breath of relief. That flood dragon. Could it be the five-clawed black dragon we were just talking about? The middle-aged Taoist said, looking at the black flood dragon's body that had been hacked apart. Right, and I think this flood dragon very likely already reached the Great Ascension realm, the old man in black said, now gradually calming down as he nodded. The green-robed woman and the middle-aged Taoist sucked in a breath. That senior could kill a flood dragon with his bare hands. And from the looks of it, he didn't even use much effort. He must also be a Great Ascension Grand Cultivator. I've seen Senior Sima of the Cold Flame Sect, and Senior Heshan of the Nine Origin Sect, but it doesn't seem to be either of them, the green-robed woman said, still somewhat frightened, her voice tinged with doubt. Could it be a change of appearance? The middle-aged Taoist thought of a possibility. Probably not. Looking at the wounds on the black dragon just now, that senior should be a pure body refiner. 8 or 9 times out of 10, it isn't those two seniors. The old man in black shook his head. If it isn't them, are there other Great Ascension cultivators in the Spirit Ring realm? The green-robed woman asked in surprise. There is one. Could it be that you two have forgotten? A few years ago, Senior Han Li destroyed the Heavenly Ghost sect overnight. That senior also seemed to be a body refiner, the old man in black said. As he spoke to this point, he unconsciously lowered his voice several times. Senior Han, in the legends. The green-robed woman's eyes could not help lighting up. They all say he is very young. It must be that senior. In the legends, this Senior Han is an exiled immortal from the immortal realm. He is a true immortal, the middle-aged Taoist also said with some excitement. While the three spoke, their eyes quickly fell on the five-clawed black flood dragon's body, and blazing greed rose in all of their eyes. The hacked-apart flood dragon corpse might be something Han Li did not care about and left behind, but to 3 transformation stage cultivators, even a small piece of Great Ascension demon beast flesh would be enough to spark a serious fight. One had to know that this was the flesh of a Great Ascension demon beast. Since the founding of the Heavenly Star Sect, it had already lasted for 200,000 to 300,000 years. Although it was still inferior to the super sects, like the Cold Flame Sect and the Nine Origin Sect, the sect still had several merge stage cultivators in residence. Its strength absolutely could not be underestimated. It was just that this sect had always acted modestly, so its reputation in the Spirit Ring realm was not great. At this moment, within a huge martial arena inside the Heavenly Star Sect, dazzling golden light flashed, and thunderous sounds rang out. An old man in silver robes flew backward like a kite with its string cut, crashing into the opened restriction. A choking sound followed as the old man opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of fresh blood, staining the front of his robe red. A pale yellow alms bowl spun rapidly like lightning and flew back, its spiritual light dim, seemingly badly damaged. Opposite the old man, suspended in midair, stood a cultivator in green robes with his hands clasped behind his back. His face was covered by a layer of green light, making his features impossible to see clearly. He slowly withdrew his hand. Around the outside of the arena were 3 merge stage cultivators. Seeing this scene, all of them were extremely alarmed. They hurriedly removed the restriction and shot over to where the silver-robed old man had fallen, their faces full of vigilance as they stared toward the green-robed cultivator in the distance. "Great Elder, are you all right?" "I'm fine." This Taoist friend showed mercy, the silver-robed old man said. He took out a golden pill and swallowed it, and his complexion gradually improved. As soon as he said this, the 3 nearby were all startled. "Your strength is truly extraordinary. I couldn't even withstand one move from you." "This is truly shameful," the silver-robed old man said with a bitter smile, clasping his hands toward the green-robed cultivator. "Since you have conceded, then, according to our agreement, hand over the 8 treasure exquisite jade," the green-robed cultivator said calmly. His voice sounded rather young. The silver-robed old man helplessly spoke a word to the merge stage strongman beside him. Though the strongman was unwilling, he still stomped his foot and shot away. After a moment, he flew back, holding a white jade box several chi long and half a chi wide, and handed it to the silver-robed old man. The silver-robed old man gently stroked the box in his hand, a trace of reluctance flashing in his eyes. Then he flicked his hand, sending a streak of golden light that wrapped the jade box and delivered it to the green-robed cultivator. The green-robed cultivator reached out and took the jade box. Green light flashed from his fingertip as he tapped it. A very soft popping sound rang out, and the white jade box slowly opened by itself. Inside were several pieces of white jade of varying sizes. They looked ordinary, but on their surfaces an 8-colored spiritual glow flowed without end. Somewhat strange. The green-robed cultivator nodded slightly, closed the lid, and flipped his hand to store it away. "These exquisite jade marrows were accumulated by our sect over 10,000 years. These are the finest 8 treasure exquisite jades. I hope, Taoist friend, you will use them appropriately." the silver-robed old man sighed. Rest assured, I will not waste the exquisite jade, the green-robed cultivator laughed loudly. Then he flicked his finger lightly, sending out a streak of white light that landed in front of the silver-robed old man. It was a storage bracelet. I also will not take your sex things for nothing. The items inside should be enough to compensate for these 8 treasure exquisite jades, the green-robed cultivator said indifferently. Then his figure blurred, turning into a streak of green rainbow light that flashed and vanished into the horizon. The silver-robed old man probed the storage bracelet with his spiritual sense, and his expression immediately changed in shock. Inside were a huge quantity of spirit stones, as well as 10,000-year spiritual herbs and some extremely precious demon beast materials. In terms of value, it was not below those 8 treasure exquisite jades and was even greater by a fair margin. Within just a few short months, several strange events happened one after another throughout the spirit ring realm. Precious materials from several sects, whether secret techniques, cultivation arts, or sect manuals, were repeatedly taken by a mysterious person. No one knew where this person came from, and his cultivation was extremely high. However, he handled matters quite properly. The sects that had their treasures taken all received considerable compensation, so it did not arouse public outrage among the major sects of the spirit ring realm. Instead, many stories spread, becoming topics of discussion among rogue cultivators and sect disciples. It was said that this person appeared and acted for only a few months, then suddenly vanished and never appeared again. In the blink of an eye, another half-year passed. In the southeastern region of the spirit ring realm, there was an enormous red mountain range stretching tens of thousands of li, called the Fire Cloud Mountain Range. Within this mountain range, the most common sights were massive volcanoes clustered one after another. Scorching magma erupted from deep underground, and the air was intensely hot, filled with a pungent sulfur smell. Almost every mountain was a deep red, as if the rocks had been heated until glowing, and even the clouds above the southern area shone with a brilliant rosy hue. These were the things that gave the Fire Cloud Mountain Range its name. It was regarded as the largest fire spirit land in the spirit ring realm, and also one of this realm's famously dangerous regions. Even cultivators with profound cultivation rarely dared to venture deep inside. In an immense abyss within the Fire Cloud Mountain Range, at its deepest point, a great magma river surged and flowed, rumbling loudly. The magma surface flickered with red light as if countless flames were burning. The temperature here was so high that the surrounding air looked hazy and distorted, rippling slightly. On a cliff less than 100 jang from the magma river, someone had hollowed out a large mountain cave. Inside, various lights flickered, and sharp sounds occasionally rang out. One day, a long shout like a dragon's roar rang out from within the cave. Immediately afterward, an extremely thick pillar of white light shot straight into the sky. Within that pillar of light, the faint afterimages of 2 flood dragons and a huge bone armor could be seen. Only after a long time did it slowly dissipate. Inside the cave, a man in green robes was sitting cross-legged. It was Han Li. At this moment, his face was filled with joy. Floating before him were 2 treasure items emitting spiritual light. One was a white bone armor with an ancient shape, carved with 8 patterns resembling shields, spears, and various other forms. The other was a fierce pair of silver gauntlets. Silver bone spikes protruded from the gauntlets, and they looked as if the gauntlets were 2 flood dragon heads. Both treasures radiated terrifying waves of spiritual energy. Han Li's eyes slowly swept across the surfaces of the 2 treasures, and a satisfied expression appeared on his face. The white bone armor was called the 8 treasure exquisite bone armor, and the pair of gauntlets was called the heaven-breaking gauntlets. He had found the refining methods for these 2 treasures in the manuals of the Heavenly Ghost sect. These were not ordinary treasures. In a certain sense, they were treasures refined specifically for body refiners, requiring tremendous physical strength to fully unleash their powerful might. Since Sima Jingming had said that ascending by sneaking methods was extremely dangerous, Han Li used all his effort to gather countless rare treasures and refined these 2 items in order to ensure safety. Han Li opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of green light, taking the armor and gauntlets back. He flipped his hand and took out a blue jade book that depicted a detailed map of the Spirit Ring realm. On the map within the jade book, several locations were deliberately marked. From various sect records, he had found the positions of weak spatial nodes. In addition, there were also locations he had searched for himself. Han Li thought for a moment, then looked toward a marked spot in the southeastern region on the map within the Jade Book. His eyes flickered a few times. After a while, a green rainbow streak shot out from the ravine and flew toward the sky. On the summit of a snow mountain, more than 10,000 zhang tall, the sky over the Spirit Ring realm was filled with rolling dark clouds that rumbled with thunder. Lightning flashed from time to time. Fierce winds howled and wildly swept through the snow, falling everywhere, covering the entire mountain in a vast expanse of white. Yet more than 100 li away from this mountain, there was only thin starlight and extreme silence, forming a completely contrasting scene. At some unknown time, someone had used immense magic power to flatten the snow mountain peak, forming a wide platform about 100 jang across. On the platform stood dozens of black stone pillars, each over 10 jang tall. They looked chaotic, but in fact concealed profound mystery. They formed a huge formation of 2 concentric circles. In the center of the formation, the ground was carved with intricate, complex spirit patterns. At the top of each stone pillar around it was embedded a spirit stone containing extremely pure spiritual power. At this moment, a tall figure was sitting cross-legged at the center of the formation, facing the wind and snow filling the sky. He was a green-robed youth with an ordinary face, but his eyes were like 2 bright stars, deep and seeming to see through people's hearts. It was Han Li. His eyes slowly closed, his hands rapidly formed seals before him, and he softly chanted a string of obscure incantations. The little Northern Dipper stellar origin art within his body immediately began to circulate. In an instant, the mountain peak blazed with brilliance. Countless silvery white starlights directly tore apart the dark clouds from above and poured down, transforming into 7 enormous pillars of silvery white light that enveloped the entire snow mountain. Snow still swept through the air under the wind, but when it touched the silvery light, it instantly melted, evaporated, and vanished. Han Li raised both hands above his head, forming seals as he directed them toward the sky. At his waist, dark light immediately flashed. The 7 Star Moon treasure mirrors flew out, each one entering a pillar of light and releasing dazzling radiance. At the same time, above Han Li's head, a strange vortex appeared. Centered on it, it drew in the 7 mirror faces of the 7 treasure mirrors. The vortex grew larger and larger, and the pulling force it emitted grew stronger and stronger, causing the 7 mirrors to involuntarily shift inward. The huge pillars of light were also guided by this power, moving and gradually converging toward the center. With a thunderous boom, the 7 pillars of silver light finally merged and fused into a gigantic pillar of light more than 100 jang thick, enveloping the entire snow mountain and piercing through heaven and earth. At this moment, the radiance deep within the Northern Dipper 7 stars grew bright and began to undergo astonishing changes. 7 spirit stones, in order beginning from Tianshu, Tianshuan, Tianji, and Tianquan, lit up with purple radiance. After several moments, the Northern Dipper 7 stars naturally shifted from their original positions, arranged like a ladle, then moved into a straight line, and then twisted into a circle. Immediately afterward, a massive mixed beam of gold, silver, and purple light surged out from within the circle. It seemed to cross millions of Li, pierce the endless night sky, and directly plunge into Han Li's body. Hop. When the mixed gold, silver, purple light touched Han Li's clothing, his garments instantly turned into nothingness. His skin immediately shone with gold-silver radiance, then became transparent. Through his flesh, one could see his muscles and bones beginning to undergo changes. Where before, there had only been a faint layer of silvery sheen, now there was a solid gold-silver layer. A thunderous rumble erupted. On the snow mountain peak, countless tiny silver particles replaced the original snowflakes, fluttering down everywhere and forming an enormous spherical screen of light that enveloped the entire mountain. Terrifying spiritual energy fluctuations spread out from within. The fluctuations grew stronger and stronger, making the entire snow mountain shake violently. Gradually, the entire surrounding mountain range also became extremely unstable. All the hills within 1,000 Li continuously trembled. Many places cracked open with long, narrow fissures that twisted and wound. Some places even formed river channels, changing the course of major rivers. In the primeval forest nearby, yellow earth rolled and churned with dust clouds. Countless wild beasts, enraged and terrified, fled in chaos, letting out frenzied roars. Above them, innumerable birds flapped their wings and flew out of the forest in dense swarms, blocking out the sky. Far away, several hundred Li from here, a towering volcano that had stopped erupting for over 10,000 years was affected by the continuous tremors and erupted once again. A huge stream of red magma, carrying thick black smoke, blasted straight up from the crater. Rising 1,000 jang high, countless red-hot burning rocks shot upward and quickly fell like a meteor shower of flames. In the night, they drew long trails, passing through layers of fiery ash before crashing down into the mountains and forests. The vast forest was burned to the ground. Flames roared and smoke billowed, turning half the night sky a blazing red. Within the mountains, more than a dozen streaks of light flew out one after another from different places. All of them stopped uneasily, several hundred Li away from the silvery spherical screen of light in the sky. Among these people, some were handsome young men with refined looks. Some were middle-aged women with graceful bearing. But more of them were elderly men over 80. Most stood alone, while a few gathered in small groups. All of them were rogue cultivators hiding in these mountains, and their strengths varied. The weakest had late core formation cultivation, and the strongest was only at mid-stage refinement. However, aside from them, there was also a rather strange-looking figure with splendid long patterns on his body, wrapped in a layer of rock-like skin with the head of a fierce beast. He was clearly a demon cultivator. But whether human cultivator or demon cultivator, at this moment all of them looked up at the snow peak in fear and doubt, and no one dared to approach and investigate such a grand momentum. Could it be a great ascension cultivator about to undergo tribulation and ascend? A white-robed young man said suspiciously as he looked at the various strange phenomena on the snow mountain. A thin old man standing there shook his head. I don't think so. There's no sign at all that a lightning tribulation is about to descend. It looks like someone is cultivating an extremely profound technique and is close to great completion, which is what caused these strange heaven and earth phenomena. That's impossible. The white-robed young man took a deep breath. He could not believe that cultivating a technique alone could cause such large-scale heavenly phenomena. At this moment, a sky-splitting scream suddenly came from the mountain peak. An incomparably powerful shockwave swept outward in a circle with the snow mountain at its center. Hundreds of li away, the people changed expression and turned into streaks of light, fleeing backward at once. One demon cultivator with lower cultivation was too slow to escape. The shockwave swept over him, and his entire body instantly tore apart, blood flowing everywhere. Just one step too late. And he met the end of death and Tao destruction. After fleeing another 100 li or more, the group finally stopped. They looked back in fear and saw that the spherical screen of light enveloping the snow mountain had expanded to twice its size, covering a much wider area, leaving the snow mountain only as a hazy silhouette. At the same time, on Nine Palace Peak of the Nine Origin sect, Taoist Heshan, fat as a mountain of flesh, was standing on the spirit-gathering platform, looking toward the distant night sky where the Northern Dipper 7 stars were undergoing strange changes. His expression was complex and hard to read. Back then, under Han Li's pressure, he had been forced to destroy the formation connecting to the Immortal realm, and within the sect, he could be considered to have completely betrayed true person Jingming. Now that Han Li was about to leave, if the ancestor in the Immortal realm used methods to investigate the matter to the end, how would he respond? It was truly something that needed careful consideration. Moreover, in recent years, the Cold Flame sect had developed rapidly, subduing many major and minor forces, and its strength would be able to rival the Nine Origin sect. Once Han Li left, the Spirit Ring realm likely would not be peaceful. Thinking of this, Taoist Taishan could not help letting out a sigh. But he was not the only one troubled and calculating. On the plaza, atop Sacred Fire Peak of the Cold Flame sect, Sima Jingming, wearing a purple cloak, was leaning on a white jade railing and looking toward the distant night sky. His expression was also somewhat complicated. After a long while, he let out a long breath, as if relieved of a heavy burden, and murmured to himself, Senior Han, you finally intend to leave. Even though the Cold Flame sect had taken over the Heavenly Ghost sect and its strength had increased greatly, Han Li's presence was still like an invisible mountain pressing on his heart. Although the Cold Flame sect and Han Li were not at odds, and were instead somewhat harmonious, the existence of someone who could destroy a sect with a lift of the hand was like keeping a talisman at one side that could explode at any time. No matter who it was, they would feel uncomfortable. At this moment, in a quiet place inside a cave dwelling on Cloud Exiting Peak, beside a stone table in a small courtyard, Gu Yunyue, dressed in white, sat facing Yu Mengan in palace attire. Yu Mengan tilted her small face, gazing at the Northern Dipper 7 stars forming a circle in the night sky, and the strange gold, silver, purple radiance that appeared, her eyes filled with emotion. That Elder Han treats you in a way that isn't ordinary. Not only did he leave his cave dwelling to you, he also left countless treasures and elixirs. Adding it up, these resources are no less than the assets of a small sect. Even if you use them to cultivate to the transformation stage, you would still have more than enough, Gu Yunyue said gently, warmly, with a hint of teasing. Yu Mengan was stunned at first, then gradually came back to herself and replied, Elder Han probably remembers what happened back then, when this disciple led him and younger sister Yuer into the residence, so he favored me like this. Actually, that kindness was repaid long ago. On the contrary, this disciple owes Elder Han even more. Gu Yunyue smiled and shook her head without speaking. The master and disciple understood each other too well, so neither said much more. The small courtyard grew quiet again. In another cave dwelling halfway up Cloud Exiting Peak, an old Daoist wearing a lotus hat and gray-white robes sat cross-legged in a stone chamber. It was Daoist Baishi. Before him lay an old blue paper book, yellowed with age. On its cover were 5 large archaic characters. Mysterious Water, Refining Ghost Record. This ancient volume was a supreme ghost Tao technique of the Heavenly Ghost sect, an important secret manual that ordinarily would absolutely never be transmitted outside. Therefore, when Han Li suddenly appeared and casually bestowed it, the old Taoist could hardly believe it. From then on, he studied it carefully, and by now he had cultivated it to the second layer. After many years stuck at the early core formation bottleneck, it finally showed signs of loosening, bringing him a trace of hope. This made Baishi extremely delighted, and at the same time, he felt incredibly fortunate that he had the chance to follow Han Li in such a short time. Late at night, the black sky was pitch dark. The starlight was unusually dim, leaving only the circular Northern Dipper 7 stars, like a silver-purple sun, shining brilliantly. A silver-purple pillar of light more than 100 jang thick shot down from above, quickly retracted, and then vanished. A tremendous boom rang out as the spherical screen of light enveloping the mountain suddenly exploded. Countless silver lights, like fireflies, danced across the sky and spread over more than half the night. From far away, it looked as if 9 layers of the Milky Way had fallen to the mortal world. But this beautiful scene did not last long. After a moment, the silver light seemed to be summoned back, quickly drawing in toward the snow peak. Then all of it plunged into the young man's body, illuminating everything around him. This person was none other than Han Li. Even as fierce waves of silver light surged toward him, he maintained his seal-forming posture with eyes shut tight, unmoving. No one knew how long passed. Then his eyelashes trembled, and his eyes suddenly opened. Blue light flickered within them, crystal clear, and in an instant they seemed to shine with countless stars. In the next moment, he gave a soft shout and spat out a patch of silvery, mist-like light. It flickered for a moment, then gradually vanished into the air. The 7 blue points of light on his chest and abdomen shone with dazzling radiance. The 7th mystic aperture had finally been successfully condensed. The silver light around his body also gradually drew back. Outside his flesh, there was a thin, hazy layer, and faint, silvery streams of light could be seen moving endlessly across its surface. This was the symbol of the true ultimate membrane, the true ultimate body. When the Northern Dipper stellar origin art reached completion, the body truly achieved such attainment at once. Han Li was extremely delighted. He lifted his arm and examined the screen of light wrapping his entire body. He discovered that it did not require the consumption of magic power to maintain. The slight coolness it carried also did not feel strange at all, as if it were a part of his own body. With a slight movement of his spiritual sense, the screen of light immediately shrank, clinging to his skin. After a while, it lit up and entered his body, disappearing without a trace. When he urged it with a thought, the screen of light that had entered his body immediately appeared again. After several trials, Han Li was overjoyed, because drawing in and releasing the true ultimate membrane was very natural. At the same time, he also discovered that the power of his spiritual sense had fully recovered. Now, speaking purely of spiritual sense strength, even ordinary true immortals were far inferior to him. As for his plan to return to the immortal realm, there was no doubt anymore. This was extremely good news. Only now did the disturbance within 1,000 Li gradually subside. The volcano's eruption also gradually stabilized and stopped. Only the forest fire continued to spread, impossible to extinguish in a short time. Several hundred Li away, a group of rogue cultivators floated in midair, looking toward the mountain, not knowing what to do. The white-robed young man was drenched in sweat down his back, and felt bewildered as he murmured, "Is it over now?" "Maybe," the thin old man said with a hesitant expression. At this moment, within the wind and snow, Han Li no longer showed any joy. Instead, his gaze was calm, and his expression was somewhat grave. Only he knew that the real trial was only beginning now. Just now, at the instant the true ultimate body was achieved, the realm's repelling force had already appeared, pressing down on him like a shadow. Now he felt the surrounding airflow immediately become heavy, as if his body were sinking into mud, and even breathing became somewhat difficult. He was no stranger to this repelling force. When he ascended to the spirit realm, he had felt it before, but at that time he was busy dealing with the lightning tribulation and did not pay too much attention. He took a deep breath, his hands formed seals, and his lips moved slightly as incantation sounds came in waves. With a humming sound, more than 10 lights around him lit up at the same time. Dense, spiritual power poured out like springs from the spirit stones atop the stone pillars, rushing along the carved lines. The spirit patterns on the ground and on the stone pillars immediately shone with radiance, quickly forming silvery formation patterns that were exquisitely fine and extremely complex. This formation was called the World Space Spirit Pattern Formation. It was a spatial formation he had found in an ancient formation manual in the scripture pavilion of the Nine Origin sect. Although this formation could not reach the level of tearing open space, it could remove part of the spatial obstruction. For him, that was already a powerful aid. A loud boom rang out amid the wind and snow. More than 10 pillars of silvery light shot up to the sky at the same time, piercing into the dark clouds. As the light pillars struck the clouds, They immediately transformed into a huge spiral vortex and began spinning rapidly around the pillars of light, while also sweeping up the surrounding wind and snow into frenzied motion. Massive bolts of lightning appeared, like gray flood dragons, twisting ceaselessly in all directions and giving off deep, rumbling sounds. The rogue cultivators far away who saw this were immediately terrified. Another strange phenomenon was happening. They hurriedly flew out more than 1,000 li before daring to stop. At this moment, inside the formation, Han Li stood up and raised his hands. More than 10 dark lights flew out from his sleeves. It turned out to be nearly 100 Star Moon treasure mirrors flying into the surrounding pillars of light. Previously, in order to refine the Star Moon treasure mirrors with a small amount of spatial power, he had already used up not only the Yin Spirit stones stored in the Heavenly Ghost Sect, but also all of those he had taken from the storage pouch of the copper-faced evil corpse. The Star Moon treasure mirrors flew into the pillars of light and immediately followed the radiance straight upward, plunging into the dark clouds. Han Li's hands moved with seals as his mouth chanted for a while. Suddenly, cold light flashed in his eyes, and he shouted loudly. Boom, boom, boom! Dozens of earth-shaking explosions rang out in succession. Countless silvery starlights exploded in the sky, then formed a region of silvery light within the black cloud vortex. At this moment, Han Li's body shone brightly. He suddenly leapt up and flew into that region of silvery light. Inside, the vortex was extremely chaotic. Everywhere around was dim, murky mist. Hundreds upon thousands of gray-white spatial cracks of varying lengths appeared in disorder everywhere, leaving the silvery region in an extremely unstable state. Han Li's gaze swept over it, and he saw that from within those cracks, tiny gray-white blades of light would occasionally fly out. The surrounding dark clouds, as soon as they touched these light blades, were cut cleanly apart. Even not far away, a thread of lightning had just appeared when it was struck, and instantly split into two, then dissipated. All around, gray light blades kept flickering, and the silvery region formed by countless starlights was being eroded at a speed visible to the naked eye. The area of the silvery region continuously shrank. Another large section of the silvery region was once again swallowed by the dark clouds. Han Li did not hesitate. He let out a low roar. Golden light radiated from his body, and his form rapidly enlarged, transforming into a golden giant ape more than 10 jang tall. After he took a deep breath, a bloody fissure opened between the giant ape's brows. From it, a mass of black energy shot out, and an eye immediately appeared. Deep within the eye's pupil, black light flickered, and a thin black beam shot out. The thin black beam trembled violently as soon as it was released, then suddenly turned into a pitch-black pillar of light as thick as a bowl. The pitch-black pillar of light flashed and plunged into empty space, disappearing without a trace. But in the next moment, deep within the black cloud vortex, a series of explosions suddenly rang out. Immediately afterward, the entire sky abruptly fell silent, as if all space had been frozen. The whole black cloud vortex, and the wind and snow around it, all stopped. This episode ends here. Everyone, remember to press like and subscribe to the channel to watch the next parts.